Were you surprised when Rick Thompson got nabbed by the feds?
Uh, I'm going to have to say yes, but uh, he got to be such a prick along with the thing. Way back there when I was doing prosecutions, I carried people to El Paso and Pecos and Midland to trial. Rick was a detention officer. He drove our buses, and so I would always take Rick as to carry my prisoners. We didn't have good transportation, so we had to take our own prisoners to the courts, you know. And he's a very, very efficient, very good. Took him to El Paso and 2 or 3 times, and the chief of the investigation section up there said, "Do you suppose that man would like to be an investigator 4 grades higher than what he is?" I said, "I'll take it up with him." Because he would do it. He was good. He got no bitch about being good. That's what he did. And so he said, "Well, I'll think about it." Well, in the meantime, the sheriff got killed. That was a sheriff then out yonder on the west side of town.
What happened to him?
Huh?
What happened to him?
He got killed by a crazy man.
Line of duty?
Yeah. He this ranch road going back in there. I'm trying to people own it then. And there's off on one side of this ranch road was a water tank and big mesquite trees growing. And the rancher called him and said, "There's some son of a bitch camping in there, and I don't want him there." So the sheriff went out, and he and his deputy went out. And this old boy was a retired Air Force major. And they approached the car, and he killed the sheriff.
Wow.
And
Just boom.
boom.
Wow.
And so that went to, then Rick got appointed sheriff then. So that's what once that happened, he had no idea. He wanted to be sheriff.
Who appointed Rick sheriff?
Uh,
Do you remember?
the judge Martinez.
Okay.
I'm sure that's right. Anyhow, the old boy shot judge, and his name was Duckworth, I believe. But he was a retired Air Force major. And he just
Twisted off, yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, anyhow, like I say, Rick was good, but he got to be where he's so officious, sort of thing. I had between he and the judge, I had a great, we had a battle back and forth. Because I made the mistake of reading and studying law. And so all of a sudden the judge told everybody in town that you can have the janitor's job if you vote for me. And so then Rick was going to fire him because it said in plain language somewhere, and it means that the sheriff's in charge of conduct or peace or whatever you would call it in the courthouse. So he decided that he and the judge Martinez decided Monroe Elms. They decided that they could fire Pete. And so we went to battle over that, and I said, it ain't your job. You can't do it. His job is with the county commissioner's court. The county commissioner's court does these, And they finally backed off on him, and Monroe said, "Well, he looked like a fucking thug." And I said, "Yeah, but he does good work, And he don't look that much like a thug." And anyhow, he stayed until he retired, but we had a hell of a battle over that, and Rick got in the middle of that.
Did he have financial troubles?
Not after a while. He has a son who is now a special Texas Ranger with the Cattlemen Association. He bought that boy a $25,000 horse to rope off of
Whoa.
back there before he'd known he had money. And it was kind of, you know, something weird about this shit. I've known him all his life. And he don't, you know, I guess Rick's in his 60s, 70s. I don't know.
By now, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, he's 70s. I
Probably
mean.
70.
And anyhow, you get this feeling, and this other old boy you see all the time up at Midland, Jerry Painter, is the crookedest motherfucker. He's as crooked as
Elms?
well, as Rick and Elms both put together. And he has lasted up there, and he got caught running. Well, not so much. He had his deputies. They'd buy information about drugs, and they'd follow it to Chicago and shit like that, you know, and then claim, well, we had jurisdiction. We had them all the way.
Oh, yeah, right.
You know, and then anyhow, and he was on the other night saying, "Oh yeah, the ISIS is here. They found goddamn rope. Sorry, they have found clothing. I started saying rope, I was clothing.
Oh, rope
On the trail.
Oh, yeah.
But he's such a crooked son of a bitch, and he was a highway patrolman. He got fired because he was a brutality. He was a mean bastard, and he want people. You know, I guess it's when you live on the inside, you see, you just think it when you're not inside, but when you're inside, you know.
Right.
Because over the years, I don't know how many, I never got one man fired. I got them suspended for doing that, for abusing somebody. And the worst part was, every time they get a smuggling case, they'd call me, and I had to go to it, regardless of whether it was Amarillo, Lubbock, Big Spring, Sanderson, Alpine, Van Horn. And I got up in the middle of the night, and my wife got to where when I'm talking to her there in bed, she knew who I was talking about when we'd start talking, and she'd said, "Oh, him again." I said, "Yeah, you know." But anyhow, I did that, and I would go and it usually happened that these old boys would sit around, and I say sit around. They didn't understand interrogation. It took me a while. I'll never say lying motherfucker. I'll never say that. I said, I don't think you're lying to me. And I'll sit there and I'll talk to them and try to be in a calm way, and I'll take notes. And then I can go back to my notes and play the game of things. And so what would happen is, I don't know, I got this idea after a while that they would be there when I'd go down and they didn't have no information. They just got them out of the car, you know. Who was the this and who was the that. And they'd sit there, and while I'd interrogate, well, I guess they decided that, if that old fucker can do it, why can't I do it? But they used this thing of, I found some of the agents with broken jaws, broken fingers, things like that. And when I did, well, come here, go in that office in there and dial the chief personally. Tell him exactly what the fuck you did. If you don't, oh, Jack will. And when Jack reports it, your ass is mud.
Oh, yeah.
If you can't be man enough to go and tell you that you made a fuck up, you know. And they were continually doing this, and they just, I said, goddamn boys, you don't, if you would, like I say, it's an entirely different thing to make somebody you make them, but to get them to talk to you.
Yeah. Coerce them.
You can't shut them up. You can't say, lying motherfucker, and don't talk to me and don't give me that shit, Well, it just works out that way.
Right.
And if I do say so, I was probably as good interrogator as they was around. I got called to sheriff's office and this, that, and the other, and talked to people, and so it was common to me to know that what I don't do is act like that.
Right.
And anyhow, so like I say, I did that, and I have got people on the telephone. Oh boy, I'd come up to the port of entry and they'd call me in El Paso and tell me that I'd put him on the phone. And I would sit there and break him to get him to admit without any of this other shit.
Over the phone.
Talk to him on the phone.
Over the phone, right.
Yeah. And they just couldn't understand why. How do you do that? Well, it was, I guess you say, hard knocks. You remember my finger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember my pistol shooting?
Mm-hmm.
It's something you learn, something that if you don't learn it, you ain't worth a shit. You know, you don't, if you can't see things like that for what they're worth. And I've made a lot of mistakes, mind you, but anyhow.
I got one more for you. Is that okay?
Okay.
Is that okay? Did you know, because I think I got the dates right, but I might have them wrong, but were you working at that job when these guys at the Davis Mountain Resort called themselves the Republic of Texas? And...
No, I was retired then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know any of those guys?
I had met one of them one time over here in the lumber yard, and it kind of startled me when I did beforehand. The men that they kidnapped to go in at the entrance over there, up there, I knew him quite well. Mm-hmm. I was commissioner at that time, and I bought some used equipment off of him up there, and I visited with he and his wife and several times, and I knew him. Yet there was a period of time when if I didn't know them, there was something bad. You know?
Yeah.
You know who? Anyhow, all these other things are little things that I got for various and sundry things. One in the gray one with the thing is from the Presidio Lions Club for starting Little League Baseball in Presidio. And the others have got various things about working with the golf team and so forth. And anyhow, and then the bear over there, one time I was gone, I had a super hand, and a bear showed up out at the golf course. And he called the sheriff's office. And this little bear they'd had a fire up in the mountains and they had been singed somewhat.
Oh.
Anyhow, they got out there and they run him till he died of heat exhaustion. And we was having a tournament, so I decided, hell, we might have, what other golf courses had a bear on it? Run all over it. So that's what that represent was the poor little bear that did it. Some things, that thing hanging down there with a hook on it is called a hoa. And it's used in southern Mexico and Central America instead of the big
Machete.
machete.
Yeah.
They use it doing everything. They mow grass with it.
Right.
They caught a lot of the I'm going to call better a big dagger. They got a name for it. And then they squash it and they get the fabric out and they make bases for rugs and they put it together in some other thing and make hats.
Huh.
A lot of things out of it.
Yeah.
And that's what the Yucatan that's what they did when it started.
Mm-hmm.
And they still got some of these big old fields and little narrow rail tracks in there where they could cut that stuff and then
Cut, yeah. Okay.
anyhow, but that's what they used that for. And we went to down there and we drove into this town in a fair, and I had always wanted one, and the man down there selling them. So I went down and I bargained with him, and he built it, and he didn't have the handle in it. And I don't know where my piece of thing, and I got a piece of newspaper, and I had him write on there the date, made by me by hand, this date. down there, and I don't know where the hell it went. Now I got something else I missed over. Did I see that little red thing?
Yeah.
Go over and read it. It's in Spanish, but see if you...
You
Okay.
can read it.
Says to make friends is a gift for you always. Am I reading that right?
To make a friend
To make a friend.
is a gift to yourself.
Oh, it's a gift to yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, where does that come from?
Well,
It's true.
Well, it's nice and everything, but I want to know the story behind
Huh?
it. I want to know the story behind it.
well, one of my good Mexican friends gave me that when I moved from Presidio. And I had some tremendous friends. I had a man who was a chief of police down there who come from Tapachula, Guerrero, and he was chief of police here. I've had two people work for me that I classify as the smartest people that I know, I've ever known. Neither one of them spoke good English. The one down in Presidio, in Ojinaga, the chief of police, I think he said "see" or "no" once or twice to me, and otherwise it's all that. He was such a brilliant man. I would go over, my part of my job was to go over and get information and so forth, and he was, of course, number one on my list, and I got to know him well. And they sent a note down there one time, we got a bunch of Cubans down in Chihuahua City, and we want you to know when they come that way. We want to know it.
Right.
And so at that time, the bridge closed at midnight. And didn't open until 8 o'clock in the morning. So they said, you put somebody to watch that thing. And I went, you know what? So I said, okay, I'll put 2 shifts on. And then I'll do the midnight to 8 shift when it's locked by myself. I'll do that by myself. I always had 2 other men. And his name was Francisco Lechuga, which was lettuce.
Lettuce.
And Francisco was living with an old gal over there that knew everybody and everything, and a separate source of information you couldn't. And so they went out and sat with me out beside the highway every night. And we talked and we visited, and one time he said, do you know anything about fingerprinting? And I said, well, yes. I took a course in it, but we don't use it anymore. But I remember enough. Oh, he said, I'd like to know something. And I said, well, my neighbor gave me a book of instructions, a course. And I just took it because he gave it to me. And I got it, and I'd be glad to give it to you, but I got a problem. The problem is it's in English. And he said, no, llévalo. So I took it over to him, and it's still daylight, and we there, and I said, here it is, now what the fuck you gonna do with it? And he opened the book, and I'm sitting there looking over his shoulder, and he starts reading to me in English.
Shit.
And I said, no shit. In Spanish. He started reading in Spanish, not English.
Right, so he's translating.
Yeah. He translated and did it all at once, and I said, what the fuck? You don't even say see or no to me. It's never yes or no, it's either see or no. Well, he said, I just can do that. And like I say, he was a source of information, and it just, goddamn, I thought he's one of the smartest men I ever met.
Where is he now?
I have no idea. He had a little misfortune. They had one of the pond parties that they started it down there was wanted for incest, and so the Presidente, who was a doctor, said arrest that motherfucker and put him in jail. And so he arrested him and he put him in jail, and about 4 days later he died. And he had a ruptured spleen.
Ooh.
And they said, and Francisco said, I didn't do it, so help me, I didn't do it. they probably may have done it at night in the thing and
Yeah,
wasn't there,
yeah.
and so, goddamn, they was after him, and he went to Acuna and talked to the general down there in charge of the garrison, he was a good friend of. And the general said, "Get the fuck out of there before you get killed, because you'll be dead shortly."
Yeah.
So he come to me, and I went to the powers that be, and I got him paroled in the United States. And I sent him up to Odessa and Midland and used him as an informant and so forth. And so I had a friend out in California who was at Chula Vista, and he said, "Oh, damn, I'd like to have a good informant." And I said, "Well, let me check." And I asked Francisco, and he said, I'd be delighted to go, get away from you. And I sent him out there, and I have no idea after he got there, he would put him to work, whatever happened to him.
Well,
The friend died, and so And now the second one, I know that probably know, Mario Tejada.
yeah.
And the other kid that his brother that rides a bicycle and hadn't got no sense at all. And then he's got a younger brother that used to work at Christopher's. Well, Daddy,
Right.
Camilo was his name. And he was born over here but grew up in Mexico. And he was just as brilliant as anything, And I worked him on the county for a couple of 3 years. And anyhow, I was always amazed at him at what he could do and things. And these friends come down from Odessa to go and fishing. We had a gravel trailer, and they broke a spring. Well, went down and nobody had springs, so I said, I'm going to go over to Camilo's. Went over and told him what the problem was. He said, he went off and he come back. He had a partial pile of junk out there, and he got him a spring and the right thing, and instead of a double spring, he built it to where he had a single spring that balanced the trailer. And me and the owner of the thing and another feller sat in my van, sat there and drank a case of beer while he fixed it. And he took that other out and set this on. 5 years later, they had done nothing to it, and it was still just as good as it ever was. Had a maintainer that the damn blade like that, and you couldn't get the cog. And he said, "I can fix it." Okay. And gave him money. He wanted money for the buying the material. And he took and cut it with a cutting torch and then ground it down and put it on the maintainer, and that son of a bitch just like this. He just, And I borrowed a sweeper from the city to sweep the runways because they get the rock on it occasionally. And so the damned old thing, you had to turn it about 3 leaps to get it to do anything.
Yeah.
And I said, "Camilo, can you fix that?" He said, "Yeah." Well, what I thought Camilo would do, and I'm surprised he didn't, was take the gear out and lay a bead on the top and then grind it to where it would fit back into the thing. Anyhow, come Monday, went out and got damn, just like, and I said, "God damn." Well, he said, "I knew where this wreck was, and it had a steering gear made with the same people,
Shoot.
and I knew that the cogs in there were the same, even though it looked different."
Jeez, man.
So he took them out for $40.
Wow.
And the city said, "This will cost you at least $600. And I had borrowed it, and and he said, "I paid $40 for it." And he took it all out and changed the cogs to where they fit into ours. Yeah, that thing just like a brand new.
Wow.
I mean, he could do anything. And he died, but he was a, like I say, self-educated. He had, I think, 2nd or 3rd grade is all he ever had. But,
Sure.
my son Stephen worked with him out at the farms when they first put him out there. And corn, they were grazing corn, and Stephen always said, "God damn, I like to be near Camilo. Said, come dinner time, the corn's good. He stops and gets some stuff and builds him a little fire and roasts that goddamn corn, and it's as good as I ever ate, you know. And he did
Yeah.
this thing, and this other man I had working for me was going down to the river one day, and a cat rattlesnake run by, was in the road, and he stopped and he jumped out and went back there to get him a hoe or a shovel or something. Camilo was riding, and Camilo got out. In time he barked out the shovel or whatever he got and walked around the front. Camilo was holding rattlesnake. And he said, what in the fuck did you do? How, what, you know? Oh, he said nothing to it. I just reached over and broke the thing off of his.
Hi.
Hi there.
Who do I have? Francis?
3 girls coming in.
Is it,
3 girls.
huh?
3 girls.
Oh, 3 girls, 3 good-looking girls.
Oh, here they come.
Well, come on in.
Oh,
Baby, how are you?
good. You know my friend Jason? Have you ever met him before?
Sure.
I
Who's going yonder?
Hi there.
She wants
Good to meet
something.
you.
She's going to do something.
Yeah, how about the skates?
Okay. You want some help
Yes.
or you got it?
have.
That's my claim to
Yes.
fame. How are you doing?
It's easier that way.
A little easier. You got it? Going all right? Sit down for a while, get a little stiff.